In 1968, George Romero brought us Night of the Living Dead. It became the classic horror film of its time. Now, George Romero brings us the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all times. Dawn of the Dead. Night of the Living Dead has ended. Dawn of the Dead is here.
George A. Romero's second zombie movie, Dawn of the Dead, stands as a monument in the horror genre, a film that not only redefined zombie cinema, but also left an indelible mark on popular culture. Released a decade after its predecessor, Night of the Living Dead, this sequel expanded upon its predecessor's themes, whilst carving its own path through the undead apocalypse. The film is a classic zombie film, often voted as the best zombie film of all time. Released in 1978, it follows a group of survivors who seek refuge from a zombie apocalypse inside of a shopping mall. As they barricade themselves inside, they must not only fend off the relentless hordes of the undead, but also deal with the internal conflicts that arise within their group. The film explores themes of consumerism, societal decay, and the breakdown of civilization in the face of a global catastrophe. With its groundbreaking special effects and social commentary, Dawn of the Dead has become a cult classic in the horror genre. Romero's choice of location was not a random choice, it served as a scathing critique of American consumer culture, where mindless consumption and materialism are likened to the mindless hunger of the zombie horde. The film's protagonists, Stephen, Fran, Peter and Roger, navigate this consumerist wasteland. The characters in Dawn of the Dead are not merely archetypes, but fully realised individuals grappling with their own morality in the face of overwhelming horror. Francine Parker, played by Galen Ross, is the sole female protagonist. She defies traditional gender roles by asserting herself as a capable survivor. She is, in my opinion, a much better developed character than Barbara from Night of the Living Dead. Stephen Andrews, her lover, played by David M.G., represents the everyman torn between his desire for security and his moral compass. Unfortunately, David M.G. passed away in January of this year. His character David has always been one of my favourites in Romero's original trilogy.
That when he says it looks good, I mean, we've learned that indeed it will look good because he has a very good eye.
Peter Washington, played by Ken Foree, is the SWAT officer, and considered as the main protagonist in the film. Peter abandoned his unit with fellow trooper Roger DeMarco to flee with the rest of the group. And finally we have Roger DeMarco, played by Scott H. Reininger. Roger is the impulsive hotshot and serves as a cautionary tale of unchecked aggression in a world gone mad. In many ways, Dawn of the Dead is a spiritual successor to Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which laid the groundwork for the modern zombie mythos. Released during the tumultuous 1960s, Night was a reflection of its time, with its stark black and white imagery and racially diverse cast challenging the conventions of the era. While Dawn shares its predecessor's social commentary, it adopts a more satirical tone, skewering the excesses of the 1970s with biting wit. What Dawn of the Dead did better than Night of the Living Dead was give us a better environment, better effects, more gore, better characters, and better zombies, in all of their blue, paled-faced gory glory. One of the most striking aspects of Dawn of the Dead is its realistic and graphic portrayal of gore. The gore was certainly ramped up in this movie compared to Night of the Living Dead.
When I first read it, I thought it was awfully shocking, to think of just in terms of numbers of bodies being maimed and gallons of blood being spilled.
Well, I think the special effects are a substantial portion of the budget, where prior to this they were less so in George's other films. It's a number of explosions, a number of cosmetic effects that Tom Savini does.
The zombies are people that have died in interesting ways, or not interesting ways, just people that have died and come back to life. A lot of them look like car accident victims, cancer patients, The one guy came in here in a suit, a three-piece suit, beautiful three-piece suit, so I made him up like a mortician would at a funeral parlor, and he was like beautiful, overly made up, with lipstick and all that, so he was walking around like a fresh one, Okay, you have to lean forward just a bit so I can powder all this. Probably get a little of your shirt here. Others are like people who have been bitten by other zombies who have died and become zombies, and they're the ones that are the grossest. I don't know what happened to you. Car accident, zombie bit your face off or something like that.
Romero and his team employed practical effects techniques to create visceral and horrifying scenes of violence and mayhem. From gruesome zombie attacks to graphic injuries inflicted upon the living, the film doesn't shy away from showcasing the gruesome consequences of a zombie apocalypse. Tom Savini also gave us some of the best looking zombies in Dawn of the Dead, one of my favourites being the plaid shirt zombie who turns up at the landing station. My favourite zombie in the entire movie is Steven, Flyboy himself. David MG's portrayal as a zombie is so good. I love his makeup, it's so simple yet traditional. Even his outfit when he becomes a zombie is so simple, a white shirt covered in blood. The way he walks and how his eyes are pointing in a different direction, and not to mention the gun hanging off his finger. Even George A. Romero loved David's zombie creation.
And I think George liked it a lot. I remember him going, "Wow, King Zombie, man, that's great."
His zombie walk is yet to be equaled. I don't know how he did that with his foot.
I mean, I really pushed that way over.
And I love the thing with the gun. He's not even aware that he's got a gun hanging off his finger. Those were all things that David invented. His body language, it's really worthy of Lon Chaney.
And I was very much at home playing the zombie. I mean, I just had a hoot playing the zombie. I really did.
Tom Savini also gave us some of the best zombie kills in Dawn of the Dead. Two of my favourites in particular. The first is the helicopter zombie who gets his head taken off by the helicopter blades.
And since I was brought in just for this particular section, I didn't have a lot of the continuity of knowing other people.
So again, it was, how the hell are we going to do this? So, well, what do I need to see? I need the guy stands up, head disappears, blood flows out. Well, that's simple enough.
Laying in on the top of my head were 2 tubes, which ran then down my back and all the way down back through the bottom of the pants legs. And 2 guys behind the boxes with the hand pumps filled with the blood.
I just handed that fish line to a guy and said, run. And when he ran with the fish line, Jim's head unraveled. And then we just pumped blood in through tubing up Jim's legs to the headpiece, spraying out of the head.
That was it. That was a take.
And the second was performed by Tom Savini himself as he plays the character Blades the biker as he shoves a machete right through a zombie's head. It's terrific.
I start realizing a lot of the PAs and grips are getting small parts as zombies and bikers. I'm thinking, I'm kind of being left out of the situation. 24 hours later, I'm getting this machete in my skull, getting kicked across the floor, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
My thing was always to use the real actor as much as possible. We could have chopped a fake head with a machete, but somehow seeing the real actor who can react, it's the real deal,
I'm grabbing on his pants and I'm raising myself up, and I'm going in for the bite. When Tom Savini comes down with the machete, camera cuts. Okay. Then they take the one with a whole cut in it, they place it in my head, camera rolls. He pulls it out. Then they print it in reverse, and it worked. It was a wonderful effect. Every time I see it, I go, like that.
In my opinion, there are 2 scenes in particular which just up the ante for the gruesomeness of the gore effects. The first is where Peter goes down into the basement and finds a group of zombies just eating body parts. It is such a grisly and gruesome sight. The second is where a group of bikers break into the mall and meet their grisly demise. The attention to detail in the effects work contributed significantly to the film's sense of dread and realism. One of the most iconic elements of Dawn of the Dead is its soundtrack, composed by Italian progressive rock band Goblin. The pulsating synths and haunting melodies heighten the film's tension, creating an eerie atmosphere that lingers long after the credits roll. The score has since become synonymous with the zombie genre, influencing countless filmmakers and musicians alike. The impact of George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead extends far beyond its initial release, shaping the trajectory of the zombie cinema for decades to come. Its blend of social commentary, visceral horror, and dark humour set a new standard for the genre, inspiring filmmakers such as Edgar Wright, director of the hit zombie film Shaun of the Dead, the title being a parody of Dawn of the Dead. In fact, Edgar Wright is such a huge fan of Dawn of the Dead and George Romero that he even took music cues from Goblin and used it in Shaun of the Dead. And just for the record, Shaun of the Dead is my second favourite zombie movie. It's full of homages from other Romero zombie movies, not just Romero zombie movies, but other horror movies in general and other movies. It's such a blast, I can't get enough of that movie. Dawn of the Dead and Shaun of the Dead wouldn't be the last time that Goblin was heard in a zombie movie. The other time it was heard was in a 1980 Italian zombie movie called Hell of the Living Dead, also known as Zombie Creeping Flesh. Moreover, Dawn of the Dead's influence can be felt in other mediums such as video games like Dead Rising. In fact, on the cover of the first game, there was a disclaimer that stated, "This game was not developed, approved, or licensed by the owners or creators of George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead." Romero's Dawn of the Dead has made such an impact that it even spawned its own series of action figures, a comic book adaptation, a novelization, and, believe it or not, Dawn of the Dead got its own board game. How's that for popularity? In the early 2000s, director Zack Snyder had a chance to remake his own version of Dawn of the Dead, and it was released in 2004. Now usually I don't really care for zombies that run in movies, I much prefer zombies to be shambling reanimated corpses, but I am going to have to let that slide just for this movie. Mainly because when I first watched this movie, I really enjoyed it. I actually thought it was one of the better horror remakes out there. The film doesn't really stick to the original film's plot. The main basis is that the characters are still trapped inside of a shopping mall. It's faster paced, more action packed, and even has cameos from Tom Savini and the original cast members. Even Ken Foree gets to recreate his famous "When There's No More Room in Hell" dialogue.
When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
But going back onto George A. Romero's original classic, I believe that the film is responsible for countless zombie conversations among friends, and it goes something like this. How would you survive a zombie apocalypse? Where would you go? Who would you take with you? What supplies would you need? How would you survive? This film is responsible for all of those things, I believe. Dawn of the Dead was also a success internationally. On September 1st of 1978, a 119-minute cut of the film, created for non-English speaking countries, premiered in Italy under the title Zombie, with Italian director Dario Argento in attendance. The film performed well thanks both to commercial advertising and word of mouth. Ad campaigns and posters declared the film the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all times. With the success of Dawn of the Dead, it made it the most profitable film in George A. Romero's Dead series. In conclusion, Dawn of the Dead remains a timeless masterpiece that continues to resonate with audiences over 4 decades later. Its blend of horror and social commentary elevates it beyond mere genre fare, cementing its status as a cultural touchstone. From its iconic soundtrack to its memorable characters to its visceral gore, the film endures as a testament to the enduring power of the undead. As long as there are fears to confront and societies to critique, Dawn of the Dead will continue to stalk the collective imagination, reminding us of the fragility of civilization in the face of the undead horde.